So let's start talking about the Incoterms 2020. Let's see. Let's see. So let's break a leg, dude. Let's break a leg. Uh, but first, let me check something. Let me check something. I gotta see here something. You know, I mean, let's confirm. Hey, okay, man. Let's do it. So, why should I learn English with either of you? So, today we are going to talk about the Incoterms. So, first, we gotta know that based on the description, Incoterms are standardized trade terms published by the International Chamber of Commerce, or ICC, ICC, that define the responsibilities of buyers and sellers in international transactions. They determine who pays for transportation, insurance, and customs duties, and when risk transfers from seller to buyer. Choosing the right Incoterm affects your land cost, liability exposure, and customs compliance. I don't know if it sounds like, Shide. If so, so sorry for real. So, why should I learn an English with either of you guys? Let's talk about the first one, who is this one? Um, X, here it is, X works. And it basically, so currently 11 Incoterms are in use, and they all fall into two categories. They are Incoterms for any mode of transport and Incoterms for sea and inland waterway transport. Here is a breakdown for you. By the way, this info can be found on this website, insureshield.com. Um, so it is quite useful. So let's break down this. X works. Here, the buyer assumes all transportation expenses and related risks once the goods depart from the seller. Or in other words, here it is. Or in other words, it is this one. Take a look. So, EX work is intended to be used when the buyer is going to take responsibility for loading the goods onto a carrier selected by the buyer without assistance from the seller. So if the seller is going to load the goods on the carriers selected and contract by the buyer, the FCA loaded should be used. So that is another one, which is this one, a free carrier. In the meantime, we are talking about the X works, okay? So no worries about it. So here can we see the step-by-step. X-work is used in any mode or mode of transportation. Here it is the export packaging, where the seller, sorry, is in charge. And once we take the second step, which is the loading charges, the seller is under control, must look after or must um, pay attention or assume every risk to import to receive the goods, And here the risk is transferred at buyer's disposal, as you guys can see here, buyer's disposal. And as it was mentioned here, forward onto a career selected by the buyer without assistance from the seller. So, yeah. I'm here just learning this, as as an international business administrator, I must learn, I must take into account each one, because maybe I could work as a junior. I don't know how to say this for this word. Um, as a logistica, um, or junior. How did you say this in English? Uh, Comercio. You know what I mean? Like international. Oh man, ayudante de comercio exterior. ¿Cómo se dice? Look at this. Ayudante de comercio exterior. Qué vergüenza. Foreign trade assistant. Well, I'm not, I don't know if if it is that right word, but yeah, I hope you guys can get it as fast as I mean, like, I hope it is easy for you. So let's take the second one, which is the FCA or the free career, as we mentioned before. So this one here, the seller hands the goods to a carrier or a designated location, or in other words, this one. So here, goods loaded on the buyer's carrier, goods loaded on the buyer's carrier by the seller at the seller's premises or other place of origin. Buyer is responsible for inland transport from the named place. Should only be used when the responsibilities of the seller are limited to loading a carrier provided by the buyer at the seller's dock, and the buyer is going to take responsibility for transportation once the goods are loaded. So here, as you guys can see here, so FCA, the buyer is in charge of I mean, like, the seller's responsibilities come till he finish here. I mean, like, the buyer, the seller is responsible until here. Export duty, taxes, and customs clearance. After that, the buyers, these ones are the buyer's obligations. So origin terminal charges, loading on carriage, yeah, carriages, and this color, this like the red one, or let me see, how do you say this? Red wine. No, 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 I don't think so, right? Okay, okay. So this can be negotiable. So yes. Later can we see if, I mean, like, it will be great taking into account the not only the advantages but also the disadvantages, because some companies work under, for example, DDP or DAP or DPU, which is really useful. I mean, like, deliver at place unloaded. So here the seller handles delivery and unloading, which is, oh man, what a good bargain, right? So no worries. Let's go on. What else should I say? So, the next one, it is the FAS. FAS, let me look for it. Here the main difference is that the category is, as we can see here on the photo, sea, inland, water, 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 waterway transport. So FAS, it means free alongside ship. Free. So this is the ship. So this is the ship here. So the seller drops goods next to the ship. The buyer takes over from there. Oh man, that is a look the word, the phrase that I was looking for, like takes over from. Amazing. Or in another words, where you are? Where you are? Yeah, you are. So if we talk about, as we are talking about what free alongside ship means, we must say that the seller is responsible for inland transport from the place of origin to the named port of export. Seller makes goods available to the buyer. Once the goods are placed within the reach of the ship's tackle, requires the buyer to notify the seller of the arrangements for international transportation and the date and place of delivery. This requires the buyer to have established a relationship with a carrier, forwarder, or agent at the ocean port of loading. The seller is responsible for all costs and transport until goods are placed alongside a vessel. So here we are, FAS. So origin terminal charges, the seller, these ones are the seller's obligations, until here. So he takes over from here to here. So yeah, hmm, amazing, right? So yeah, because it says like seller makes goods available to the buyer once the goods are placed within the reach of the ship's tackle. Required the buyer to notify the seller of the arrangement for international transportation and the date and place of delivery. This requires the buyer to have established a relationship with a carrier, forwarder, or agent at the ocean port of loading. And the seller is responsible for all cost and transport until goods are placed alongside a vessel. So here, so as alongside ship, transfer of risk. I would say that FAS requires a lot of communication, Um, overall, you say, um, sell the buyer must be serious and must provide the accurate info, So amazing. Filler word Continue to the FOB, which is free on board. And here we are in the same category, sea and inland waterway transport. The seller is responsible until they load the goods onto the ship. Or in another word, here we are. Seller is responsible for inland transport from the place of origin to the named port of export. Seller makes goods available to the buyer when goods are loaded on board the vessel. Is intended for use when it is important that the goods pass the ship's rail to evidence delivery. This term is most commonly used for bulk cargo and port-to-port shipments of goods not loaded in an ocean container. So bulk cargo, it is huge, bro, huge. Trust me. Maybe for, let's say, how do you say, grain? Let me look for it. Let me. Corn kernels. Let me.
Corn kernels.
Corn kernel. So yeah, man. Once again, let's see here in the photo. Buyers and sellers obligation. So seller's obligation. Sellers takes from here to here. Loading on carriage, till here. Loading on carriage and on board vessel. Easy peasy, right? Not too hard, not too difficult. So I would say like depends on, as it says here, this term is most commonly used for bulk cargo and port-to-port shipments of goods not loaded in an ocean container. So yeah, I mean, like if you are a person who only brings a container, maybe this one free on board is not for you, because of it is not as big as a bulk cargo. So anyway, let's go on, move on. The next one, it is CFR. CFR, and CFR means cost and freight. Cost and freight. And here, and it is the same category, sea and inland waterway transport. And the seller pays for transportation but does not pay for insurance. As we can see here in the photo, CFR. I mean, like that is interesting because based on this info, the seller pays for transportation but does not pay for insurance. So here in the photo, it shows that the insurance can be negotiated, it is negotiable. Well, I mean, like I have not worked in an international company or cargo company, you know what I mean, yet, but that would be interesting. I would say like depends on negotiations, that that trades the buyer and the seller have made, or you know what I mean. So in nice. Maybe that is not so true, Like the seller pays for the transportation but does not pay for insurance. Maybe some people gets better agreements and the seller uh, will pay for insurance. As I say this because of this, you know, like otherwise I will not say so. Okay. And then as buyers, we must take over from this point. Take over responsibilities from this point. Destination terminal charges delivered to destination and loaded at destination, import duty, taxes, and customs clearance. Hmm. I just read this one, right? Yeah, I just did. Free on board. Okay. CFR, or in another words, cost and freight. Seller is responsible for placing the goods on board an ocean vessel and paying for international transport to the port of destination. Is intended for use in shipping, ocean freight, pier, pier. How do you say this? How do you pronounce this? I don't know. I don't know exactly. Honestly,
Peer.
pier, peer-to-peer cargo that is not containerized when it is important that the goods pass the ship's rail to evidence delivery, and the seller is contracting and paying for international carriage, and the seller is contracting and paying for international carriage, the seller. So here, the seller, here, carry charges, here, carry charges, blah, 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 loading charges, export packaging, nice export duty, taxes, and customs clearance. So that's why it say here like and the seller is contracting and paying for international carriage. Nice. This term is usually limited to oversized goods that cannot be loaded into a container, overweight shipments, or less than container load shipments. So nice. Man, once again. Let's proceed to the next one, which is CIF, or insurance, freight. Let's see. Cost, insurance, and freight. The seller covers transport and insurance costs. In other words, the seller is responsible for placing the goods on board an ocean vessel. Seller must pay for international transport and insurance to the port of destination. Is intended for use in shipping peer-to-peer ocean cargo that is not containerized. The insurance purchased is to be for a minimum amount of coverage once the goods are loaded on the ocean vessel, and is to include insurance coverage to cover the buyer's insurable interest to the port of destination stated on the bill of lading. The insurance is to cover 110% of the CFR value of the goods, cost and freight. So uh, I remember that the last semester, well, 2 semesters before, at the 2025, but the first semester, there was a subject which and 2025 at the second semester. The in our career there is a module, a subject, and its name is International. I just forgot it. I have here the book, the notebook. Let me look for it. Let me find it. I guess this one. Honestly, I forgot. I forgot. I forgot. I forgot. I forgot, dude. So sorry. So sorry, man. So sorry, my friend. Oh, and yeah, however, Dios, no mucha información, ¿no? Qué belleza. I mean, like, I really love my career, honestly. I like it. Why not? I just forgot. Um, uh, anyway, let me look for this one. I hope you guys can get it. Yeah. I don't know if that is the semester 6. Mm, mm, mm. Oh, this one. International trade and I don't know how to say it. I mean, like, of course I can do it, but logistics and international physical distribution. Oh, I really love that subject. For real, for real, for real. I mean, like, we talk about pallets, we talk about containers. There are like three or four type of containers, and two type of pallet, which are the um as the American palette and the British palette, I guess. So yeah, there is only a difference, I would say, like centimeters. So yes, what else do you want me to say? Mm, for example, if we use an American palette and we want to how many boxes, for example. I mean, like we must take into account not only the how do you say this? Oh man, I don't know. I mean, like for example, I mean like if we buy a product, right? So depends on product. Let's say this product. Let's say this product. Um, in which box? Uh, where should we put this? I mean, like this product so that is not dangerous and we can import it safely, I mean like in the right way, appropriately. And yeah, I mean like the size of the boxes, for example, and how many boxes fits into or can we put on the American palette, And based on this info, we can figure it out. We can figure how many pallets do how many pallets do we need to put into a container, you know? By the way, the teacher also say that uh, in a container we can, I mean, like if we don't have the, if we have the enough amount of money to buy something, for example, from China, and we want to bring it to Colombia, um, we can share a container, you know, with more people, for example, and and maybe it can reduce cost, you know. It can be cheaper for a company, for us, or we should take into account like, oh man, maybe it will be much better, um, affordable to bring a lot of these products, or maybe not only these products but also more products. Let's say for example this kind of it is how do you say, man, the place where you put money and you can save money. um, ¿Cómo se dice en español también? Alta. Piggy bank, piggy bank, you know. So yeah, so well, so we must first we must first we must yeah, I mean, like we must take into account how expensive it will be. And if we can bring two products for a nice price, it would be, I would rather bring two products for a low price than bringing only one product for for a higher price, you know, and the container will be only completed until the will be half completed, not all of them, not all of this container, you know. Um, so that is interesting. I find it interesting. What else? Yeah. Let's proceed to the next one, which is one. Also, we come back one more time to the any mode or mode of transportation. We just talk we just talk about sea, inland, waterway transport. We're about to talk about any mode or modes of transportation one more time. So let's do it. CPT. And CPT means carriage paid to. And here the seller pays for shipping. However, the buyer takes on the risk when the seller gives the goods to the carrier. So let's hear CPT. CPT. Seller is responsible for placing the goods on an air or ocean carrier, containerized, roll on, roll off, at the port of export. Seller must pay for international transport to the named place of destination. Is intended for use in shipping by air freight and ocean shipments that are containerized or can be rolled on and off the vessel. This term is also used for multimodal ocean shipments. The term CPT allows for the seller to arrange and pay for transportation from a named place at origin to a named place or destination in a foreign country. Let's see it here on the photo. So CPT, these ones are the seller's obligation, and the seller takes over responsibility from here to here. Oh man, I love this. First seller takes over. Okay. The destination terminal charges, and then proceed the buyers. These ones are the buyer's obligations. And the risk is transfer at carrier, you know? Love it, love it, love it. Mm. As I mentioned, as I have mentioned, um, on the next video, maybe not shortly, I assure you that we will be getting some exercises so that we can understand easily, you know, because in this moment I just want to provide meanings the meanings of each Incoterms, you know. I mean, like in this moment, I don't work officially in an international company or something like that, but I can understand a little bit. And as far as I know, um, as I mentioned before, by the way, there are some companies that, for example, they negotiate in the DDP or DAU or DAP, you know what I mean? So, or DPU, by the way, here, this one, DPU, deliver at place unloaded. And here the seller handles delivery and unloading. So nice, really nice. Really nice, you say, man. Yeah, man. So why should I learn English with either of you guys? CPT, I don't know, enough for, yeah, I just read this one. Let's proceed to the CIP. And CIP means carriage and insurance paid to. The seller covers transport and insurance until the agreed upon location. The seller covers transport and insurance. The seller. Okay, the seller covered transport until where? Until until the agreed upon location, until the agreed upon location, CIP, until the agreed upon location. Okay. Destination terminal charges. Okay. So the seller covers transport and insurance until the agreed upon location, CIP. Okay, so here, okay. Nice, nice. Here we are at career one more time, and the difference between CPT and CIP, it is the insurance, you know. So that's why it's a here like insurance and insurance, while this one say the seller pays for shipping. However, the buyer takes on the risk when the seller gives the goods to the carrier. So here, loading on carriage, you know, or here, for example, I guess, oh, CPT, and we are talking, we're, okay, CIP, let's read this one out, CPT, CIP now. So, carriage and insurance paid too. Seller is responsible for placing the goods on an air or ocean carrier. One more time. Containerized, roll on, roll off cargo at the port of export. Seller must pay for international transport and insurance to the named place of destination. And as we can see on the photo, the difference is the insurance. So move on to the next Incoterms, which is, let me see, DAP. So DAP means delivered at place. Um, and here the seller transports goods to the buyer's site, and the buyer is responsible for import duties, or in other words, deliver at place, deliver at place, deliver at place, deliver at place. So establish an agreement that include identification of who will ensure the shipment. Typically, it is the seller under this term. The seller delivers goods to a named destination, but the buyer is responsible for import, customs clearance, and payment of duties. This is one of the most common terms in US-Mexico cross-border trade. And here the photo shows, yeah, nice. DAP, the seller transports goods to the buyer's site, and the buyer is responsible for import duties. See, unloaded to destination and import duty here. Nice. And that risk is transferred at named place. And yeah, an agreement of who will ensure that shipment. Typically, it is the seller under this term, the seller. The seller delivers goods to a named destination at named place. Nice, man. And then comes the DAU. DAU. I would say DPU, right? Deliver at place unloaded. And here the seller handles delivery and unloading. Let me see if we are on the same page, because as we can see here, the PU, we cannot, I mean, like, it is not here, right? So what should we do? Oh man, no worries about it. It is not as hard, you know? So based on the photo, the AU and the info, the provided info, DPU means like the seller handles delivery and unloading. The seller handles delivery and unloading. The seller delivery handles delivery and unloading. The seller unloadings. You know, you can see here, unloaded at destination. Oh man. Oh bro, I love myself. Hey God. So as I mentioned before, let's move on to the last one, which is DDP. I don't know if you guys who guys and at is, but parentheses, right? How do you pronounce parentheses, by the way? It is the right way to say parentheses? Then here it is. Oh man, I was wrong. Yeah. Parentheses. And how do you pronounce it?
Parenthesis.
Nice. Parentheses. So we are talking we will see DDP, right? Delivery duty pay, but I want to say only in this parenthesis that there was like an streaming university streaming. Um, there is a man whose nickname, I would say, it is like uh, DDG. So there was another man who who was like, so there was a kind of a problem, but exactly no, what it was not actually it was not a problem. So this man said to DDG, uh, due to garbage. So, of course, that is not his real nickname. Of course, it is not due to garbage, but another nickname. So we close this parenthesis. So finally, here it is the DDP. It means deliver duty paid. And here the seller deals with all costs, including customs duties. Nice, right? I mean, like, no idea how much the buyer must pay or what kind of contract the seller and the buyer. ¿Cómo se diría cerrar un contrato? Ah, es que eso suena muy macheteado. Close a contract. Imagine closing a contract. O sea, nah, it doesn't make sense, right? Let me look into it, please. Okay. The buyer and the seller concluded, oh yeah, concluded sounds much better. A contract on DDP terms. Or the buyer and the seller executed a contract under DDP terms, or the buyer and the seller finalized a DDP contract. Or also agreed on a contract under DDP. Oh, I love this one. The buyer and the seller agreed on a contract under DDP. Nice. I love it, man. I love it. So DDP, delivery duty paid, is intended for use in shipping goods by any means of transport to a named place. The seller is responsible for all transportation costs, customs formalities, duties, taxes, and any other expenses normally incurred in the course of transportation and customs clearance of goods entering the foreign country. The seller is also responsible for obtaining any import permit or import license that may be required to satisfy governmental or industry regulation for entering goods into the foreign country. Well, let's see. DDP. Here you are. The only responsibility um, of the buyer is like unloaded at destination. Here is the seller who takes over all the responsibilities, right? Like, yeah. It's intended for use in shipping goods by any means of transport and employee. The seller is responsible for all transportation costs. And the seller deals with all costs, including customs duties. The seller is responsible for. Nice. So the difference is this one, right? I mean, like, if we talk about the D group, yeah, So DAP versus DDP, the difference that determines who pays customs duties. Under DAP, the seller delivers goods to the destination, but the buyer handles import, clearance, and pays duties. So under DAP, as you guys can see here, unloaded at destination and import duty, taxes, and customs clearance. That is, that is responsibilities for the buyer. Those are the responsibilities for the buyer. So yeah, the buyer handles import, clearance, and pays duties. Under DDP, the seller assumes everything. Yeah, it is right, including duties, taxes, and custom formalities in the foreign country. At the U.S.-Mexico border, this distinction determines who bears the compliance burden. So this one, TMs, it is a website, okay? It is a company. So TMs manage both the scenarios seamlessly. So I would say this is this topic. I would say no, that is 100% sure. We as a we I don't know how to speak French, sorry. Um, mm, so uh, we as an international trader or international business administrator or someone who would like to work in a logistics or supply chain sector, I have to focus on this, you know. This is like my second Bible, you know. There is an important dictionary that I have to once I am on once I go to the bed, I would like to recap everything, you know, like oh man, what X word is, what freight cost insurance freight is, or free free alongside the ship means or free on board means. By the way, I just forgot a free career means, you know, that those ones. This is so important. So as I say, um, as I mentioned, we we will be. I mean, like we will talk. We will resolve some exercises. You know, of course, not about the, of course, not pallets or how many pallets fits into a container, a 40 feet container. No, no. I mean, like, if we buy something in China and we want to, let me look for the word, and we want to import, I mean, like, import, but I want to find the right word, dude, honestly. I mean, like, okay, man. What I mean is that if we buy something in China, depends on product we want to import. So based on this product and based on the negotiation with the seller, we should take into account which Incoterms we should uh, agree on, you know, close the deal, close the trade, the contract. Once we once we take into account each Incoterms, uh, man, I assume that we can handle negotiations, you know. So yeah, I mean like Rome was not built overnight. However, if we work on this, we try to improve this day by day. Of course, we will be better, much better than yesterday, you know. So I hope you guys could have understood and be a little bit of Incoterms because of I did, yeah. Of course, right? So see you the next time and max good